In today's video, we are going to learn how to create this data services provider flyer in Adobe Photoshop. So to get started, we will head over to our file, click new, and enter our dimensions. So the dimensions I will use for this design is 1080 by 1350 pixels. So I'll enter 1080 for the width and 1350 for the height. So make sure the dimension is set to pixels, and I'll increase the resolution to 300 and leave all the other things the same. I'll click on create and the artboard is created. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is to change the background color. So to do that, I'll come to the down here and click on this icon and choose solid color from the drop down options. Okay, so this is the color we are going to use. Okay, and the color code is 3A0101. Okay, so I'm going to lock the background by clicking on this padlock icon here. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to draw an ellipse. So I'll hold down shift and draw a perfect circle, and I'll change its color to a brighter color. So the next thing I'll do is to go to the filters panel, come to blur and click on Gaussian blur. Okay, so I'll click on convert to smart object. You can see that it has given us a flare. Okay, so I'm going to position this flare right here and duplicate it and bring it to the opposite side as well. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to draw a rectangle. So I'll select a rectangular tool and draw a rectangle to cover half of our artboard. So after drawing the rectangle, I will click on any of the small circles in between the rectangle and drag it inwards to draw a rounded rectangle. So I think this is fine. So the next thing I'm going to do is to increase the height of the rectangle to cover the rest of the bottom. Okay, so once that is done, I'm going to change the color of the rectangle to white, and to do that I'll double click on the shape layer or the small icon inside the rectangle in the layers panel. So I'll double click on it, the color picker will open and I'll select white. So the next thing I'm going to do is to draw another rectangle. Okay, so you follow the same process to give it rounded corners. So I'll click on one of the circles, drag it inwards to give it rounded corners. The next thing I'm going to do is I'll come to the top panel over here and I'll click on this icon over here to center it perfectly in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to increase the size a bit and bring it down. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to change the color of this rectangle also. So to do that, I'll follow the same procedure. I'll come to the layers panel and double click on the small icon by the rectangle. Then I'll pick a background color and give it a little bit of brightness. Okay, so I think this is good. The next thing I'm going to do is to give the rectangle a little glow. So to do that, I'll click on the FX panel, select blending options, and click on outer glow. So the outer glow, I'm going to increase the size a little bit and make sure your color is set to red. Set the opacity to 42% and blend mode to screen. So once you are done with that, then you click on OK. You can see our design is looking good even without images and text. So the next thing I'm going to do is to bring in my image. So I'll head over to the folder, select the image and drag it into the frame. Okay, so what I'll do next is to drag it down below the white rectangle. Okay, so once that is done, I'm going to decrease the size a little bit. Okay, so the next thing I'll do is to remove the background, and to do that, I'll right click on the image and click on rasterize layer. So once that is done, I'll scroll down through the properties, and at the quick actions, I'll click on remove background. Okay, so now the background is removed. I'm going to increase it a little bit. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to edit the image, and to do that, I'll click on the image, go to the filters panel and click on camera raw filter. Okay, so now we are in the camera raw filter, and in the camera raw filter, what I'm going to do first is come to the highlight and reduce the highlight to 0 or -100. And the next thing I'm going to do is to give it a little bit of contrast. Then I'll scroll down to the effects panel, give it a little bit of texture and clarity. Okay, so I'll scroll up and give it a little bit of exposure, and I'll click on OK. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to bring in our thunderbolts at the back of our subject. So I'll select our subject, go to the folder and pick the PNG file. Okay, so I'm going to reduce the size, tilt it a little bit, position it right here and drag it behind the image. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is head over to the filters panel, click on blur and select Gaussian blur. Okay, so I'm going to reduce the blur. Okay, so I think this is fine, and I'll head over to the filters panel again to blur, and this time I'll click on motion blur. Okay, Yeah, so I think this is fine. So the next thing I'm going to do is to create this lens flare, and to do that I'll select the ellipse tool, go down shift and draw a circle. Okay. So I'll change the color of the circle. So I'll click on this color swatch over here and use the color picker to pick a lighter color from our object behind the image. Okay, so I'll head over to the filters panel, blur and Gaussian blur. I'll click on convert to smart object and increase the radius. Okay, so I'll position it right here, duplicate it and bring it down. Okay, once that is done, the next thing I'm going to do is to write our text over here, AFA data services. So I'll select my type tool and change the font to impact. Okay, so I'll turn on my caps locks and write AFA. Calm down a little bit and write the second word, which is data. So I'll increase the font to 48, position it right here. I'll increase this one as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to increase the AFA for it to be on the same line or the same size with the data. Okay, so once that is done, I'll select the two and reduce the size. Okay, so I will change the font color to yellow. So the next thing I'm going to do is to write the services. So I will select my type tool again, and this time I'll select 4 pins. So I'll right click here, and before I type in, I'll change the size of the font. Now type the word services. So once that is done, I'll come to the properties panel and change the font size, the font type to semi-bold italic, and change the color to white. Okay, so I'll position it right in line with it. So what I'm going to do is select the white rectangle and the wine rectangle and reduce it a little bit. Bring it down and increase it a bit to fill. Okay, so I'll also reduce the size of our rectangle here a bit. I think this is better. So the next thing I'm going to do is to write your data needs my priority. So I'll select the type 2 once again. Okay, so I'll change the font to regular. The next thing I'm going to do is to draw the 3 rectangles inside this rectangle. These darker rectangles to contain the prices and packages. Before I do that, I'll first draw this rectangle here. So let's select the rectangular tool, draw a sizable rectangle, give it rounded corners, and change the color. So I'll scroll down to the FX drop down menu, select gradient overlay. Okay, so the gradient I used, the first color is 7B0302 and the second color is C30202. Okay, so once that is entered, click on OK and make sure the angle is set at -170 degrees, and you click on OK. So the next thing we are going to do is to click on the FX again and click on blending options, and this time we are going to select outer glow. Okay, so the outer glow is selected, so you click on the outer glow itself and we are going to reduce the size a little bit. After reducing the size, then you click on OK. So the next thing we are going to do is to write the text in this glowing rectangle, which is our data plans. So I'll pick the type 2, reduce the font size, and write okay. I'm going to reduce the size for it to fit into the rectangle. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to change the font type to bold. And I'll change the color of plants to yellow. Okay, so now I'll draw the 3 rectangles. So I'll select the rectangular tool, draw a sizable rectangle, reduce or give it rounded corners, increase the size a bit, and duplicate it. and I'll duplicate it one more time. Okay, and I'll position it well. Okay, so I'm going to change the color of these 3 rectangles to a darker shade of the color we are working with. So the next thing I'm going to do is to write the data packages, and to save time, I'm just going to copy it from the previous design. Okay, so you can see that this rectangle is bigger than what I actually used in the previous flyer. So I'm going to select the rectangle and reduce the size a little bit. Select this and reduce its size as well. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to enter the rest of the data. So I'll come back and copy the second set. Okay, and lastly, I'll come back again and copy the last set. So once this is done, the next thing I'm going to do is to write the rest of our information below here. So I'll create another rectangle and give it rounded corners. Okay, so I'll give it the gradient we gave this small rectangle over here. So I'll come to FX and click on gradient overlay and click on OK. So what I'm going to write here is the contact number of the person. So I'll select the type tool and enter the number. So I'll duplicate this number, drag it down, and write WhatsApp us now. Okay, so I'll reduce the size and reduce it to regular. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do now is to write the last set of text. So we are going to write this text here and this text here. So to start with, we are going to write this one right here. Data delivery is done in less than 10 minutes. So I'll select this right here, duplicate it, and drag it down. Okay, so I'll change the color to this color right here, and data delivery is done less than 10 minutes. Okay, so I'll position it right in the middle here and change the font to bold. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to write is the other services. So I'll pick my type 2, right, other services. Okay, so I'm going to select the services and change the type to semi-bold italic. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate the number, bring it here, change the color, and write the other services. So I'll reduce the size. Duplicate it and write the second service. Okay, so the last thing I'll do here is to select the rectangle tool and draw a rectangle around this text right here. So I'll come to the fill, give it none, select the stroke, select a color, and change the size to 2 px. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down a bit and give it rounded corners. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do is to go to the folder and bring in these shapes. Okay, so the shape I'm going to need is this one right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the eraser tool and get rid of the unwanted ones. Okay, so it's left with this one right here, which is the one I need. So I'll tweak it into how I want it. Position it right here. Okay, now come to the FX panel, color overlay, and choose red. So the next thing I'll do is go to the FX panel, click on blending options, and select outer glow. So I'll increase the size a little bit. Okay, So the next thing I'm going to do is to edit the whole flyer to make it pop. And to do that, I'll first save it onto my desktop. So I'll come to the file, export, quick export as PNG. Then I'll select the location I want to save it. So I'll select desktop and save it. Okay, so once that is saved, I'll come to the file, click on open, come to desktop and select the flyer we just saved. Okay, so once it is open in Photoshop again, so you can see that when you come to the layers panel, it's just one layer. It's just one layer. It's not all these layers. It has been saved as a flyer, so it's now one image. So once it is brought back in Photoshop, I'll come to the filters panel and click on camera raw filters. Okay, so I'll give it just a little bit of contrast. Scroll down, give it a little texture and a little clarity and a little bit of vignette. And I'll come up and increase the exposure. Okay, so I'll scroll down to the details, give it a little bit of sharpness and reduce the noise. Okay, so you can see the before and the after of our design. This is the before and this is the after. So you can see the design is looking very much better after the camera raw editing. So this is how I designed this flyer in Adobe Photoshop. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next video.